When my mom has said to me that I should have just aborted you. You literally serve no purpose in my life. Reminding me that I was a mistake. Reminding me that she had never planned for me. That I wasn't meant to be here. Telling me things like, I ruined her life and that I was the worst thing that ever happened to her. And that wasn't said once or twice or thrice. My mom used to introduce me to people as her sister, and I felt rejected. And so as an adult, I found myself constantly people-pleasing so much because I never wanted to not be accepted. I always wanted to be liked, I wanted to be accepted, I wanted to not be rejected, just because the rejection was what I dealt with as a child. Hey y'all, what's up, what's up? My name is Shyro Ogolla. That is Shyro with the Y, Shyro. I am a singer, songwriter, music teacher, director, creative, stage performance coach, among different things in modeling and film as well. And I am grateful to be here. I stand today as a manifestation of God's grace, God's mercy, favor, love, and goodness. Excited to totally share my story, which has been one of childhood trauma, abuse, alcoholism, mental despair, emotional despair, and breakdown in one season of life to the other, having been kidnapped and assaulted, held hostage, and thinking that my life was gonna end a few years ago, battling addiction for 7 years, ruining all the relationships that meant so much to me, and just getting to the edge and trying to commit suicide so many times, then trying to seek Jesus and finding myself in a cult. My goodness, it was one cycle after the other after the other. But God preserved me and has kept me here till today to be able to share my story. And I hope that you can remember that there's always hope at the end of the road. So in my last week in rehab, I got to, do a class in the afternoon, and we were watching a story like on your platform. And this story was Rebecca. And I remember just being in so much shock because I was like, we told her women actually are, deep into alcoholism like this. And I think it's not even just her sharing the story about her recovery and her journey, but I think it's more of how honest she was about everything she'd gone through. And I could relate to some things. And for such a long time, I was in a space where I was so ashamed. There was so much guilt because of how much I hurt so many other people and myself. And so I felt like her sharing her story shined some light on my life. And just being like, if she can get past it, I can too. And miraculously, a week after I'm out of rehab, I've been home trying to recalibrate and just start over, I get a call and I'm called for an audition to go for some TVC. And I'm just seated going through the lines and somebody taps me. And when I turn, it's her. So I was like, what? Oh my God, I know you. And I think maybe she must have been like, what is this crazy girl talking about? So she asked me, oh, do you? How do you know me? Have we met before? I was like, can we step aside and have a talk? And I told her, I just watched your story last week. I'm just fresh out of rehab. And I mean, your story was just insane. I could relate to, you dealing with a mom who's an alcoholic, because my mom has been an alcoholic too, and that similar journey, and I'm healing now, I'm recovering. And she was amazed. We exchanged our contacts, and she invited me for lunch again a week after. And voila, I think right now it's safe to say that she's the closest female friend I have. yeah, that's how I now was able to find myself here because she opened that door. And when I think about how God introduced her, I feel like he dangled her as like a carrot, like, hey, sniff this little rabbit. And I was like, I like that. I like that. So I'm just so grateful. I'm really grateful because she continues to have so much impact in my life. And I have to say this, one very powerful thing I've learned from her about my recovery is she told me, do not look at your recovery or your sobriety journey as just a recovery process. I'm born again. Christ is my savior. And she has really emphasized on the importance of looking at it as a deliverance. You know, I no longer have the desire to drink because God has delivered me from that bondage. And walking in so much freedom and power through that, I don't feel like I have so much fear of, just relapsing or going back to old patterns because I've been doing the work and I continue to do the work of dealing with the root issues one day at a time. And I think that was a very important thing because I've also received negative energy from people who probably are not okay with the change that has happened for me. And people are just waiting. That those people around you, like someone told me recently that, oh, you're just a drunkard. When ni mlevi tu, mi nimekuja tu ukiwa mlevi, utarudi. And let me tell you something. If I had understood what the relationship between childhood trauma and adult trauma, and how childhood trauma can manifest in different ways, whether addiction or whatever other kind of way in adulthood, I think I would have caught myself early enough to deal with the root issues. Because you see, for me as an alcoholic for a very long time, I thought that my drinking was just, stress. It was just me trying to, deal with the reality that was. I hadn't really been taught that my unhealed self, the child in me, was crying out for help. And of course, as an adult, the bad choices that I made were just a rope tied to my younger self, trying to like pull her. It's very important for parents to be very cognizant of the words they speak over their children's lives, the day-to-day habits and the environment they create for their children. And I'll give an example. For me as a child, my mom being an alcoholic, there's a period of my life where she would be home and, probably blasted out drunk in the bedroom, locked in the bedroom with crates of beer, just drinking. We're living in the same house, but we're not talking. We're not relating at all. Sometimes I wasn't even sure if she knew whether I've eaten, whether I'm alive, or I've gone to school or missed school. And other times when she's partying, like she would just disappear and I wouldn't see her sometimes for a few days before she comes back. And so what that did for me is that I had to raise myself and I had to be raised by the television. The environment that I had as a child was of me being on my own. So as an adult, I find that you can come into my space for probably a few hours and I'm already tired of you. And after a few hours, I want you gone. And it's all tied to that because as a child, I was so much on my own that I got used to just being in that space on my own. And so even as an adult, being an alcoholic, I found that I used to enjoy just being in the house alone and drinking in that depressive closet. I wasn't much of a partying type of drinker. Yes, I partied from time to time, but I was more of a closet drinker, a loner type of drinker. And it's because that's what I watched, my mom do as a child. So the same habits started manifesting even in my adulthood. And so definitely a lot of the habits and a lot of the things we see and experience as children become the manifestation of what is as an adult. If you speak to your child and constantly are telling them they're stupid, they'll grow up thinking that they're probably not the smartest person and they can't really, they'll always, downgrade themselves and downplay their capabilities, My mom used to introduce me to people as her sister, and I felt rejected. And so as an adult, I found myself constantly people pleasing so much because I never wanted to not be accepted. I always wanted to be liked. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to not be rejected, just because the rejection was what I dealt with as a child. My story goes way, way back to the mid 90s. When I say that, I now feel very old, goodness. But I thank God for this far, just being able to sit here and share this. I was born back in 1995, May 26th, to a beautiful young woman named Purity. That's my mom. And I constantly have to keep saying this. I believe I really, really am a walking miracle. And that's also because my mom has also said that to me. And that's because she had me at the age of 14. And she was just a child herself. In fact, she tells me she was pregnant at 13, so she was headed to 14. But sometimes it feels so uncomfortable to even say it like that. But yeah, she had me at 14, and she was just a child herself. My mother is an orphan, didn't have her own parents. Her mom died, I believe, while she was about 8 or 9. And so she was shipped to live with her auntie. She's the firstborn. The other kids were all scattered, living with different people. And so my mom was taken to live with this particular auntie of hers. That's in Meru. And so this woman was just terrible. This woman was insane. And I would know because I also got to live with her at some point. And so when my mom narrates to me till today what happened, in fact, yesterday she was just showing me, I was massaging her feet, and she showed me some marks she has on her feet because of knives, like knife knife scars. And that's because that's what this woman did her. So it was that brutal. But I won't get into too much of what happened between them. However, my mom decided to run away. She couldn't continue living with this woman, who's supposed to be my grandmother. And so she ran away. When she ran away, she tells me that she hopped on a lorry that was full of garbage with her brother, their second born. And they found themselves, in Nairobi and in Ngong. And she had a family member, a distant relative who lived in Ngong. And so this other relative, lady as well, took her in. But of course, took her in as a house help and as amboch. So my mom didn't get to finish school or go to school. And so she started working as a help for this person. Fast forward a few years later, one thing happens leading to the other. And so she got pregnant and she had me. And so things got tough with this relative. And so she moved in with a friend of hers in some slum that's in Mbulbul. And I came into this world and, I'm here. There's no plan. My biological dad does not even know I exist. And he doesn't even live in the country. He's not even here. She hadn't even mentioned to him that she was pregnant because they didn't even get to see each other again when he left the country and was living away. So, she meets a young man called John. He already has me, but the guy is so, I guess, into her and was willing to take me and, raise me as his own. I thought he was my dad initially. But that wasn't something that lasted because they had a very strenuous relationship. And now as an adult, I got to understand my mom that he was a very violent person. But before they parted ways, my mom was already pregnant and she gave birth to a baby boy. That is my brother, our second born. And so when they parted ways, my mom took me with her, but left the boy with now my half brother with the dad. And I started living with people. So because my mom is still very young, doesn't even know how to fully fend for herself, let alone me. I lived with different people. I lived with strangers, some of her friends that I didn't even know. I just know I'm thrown in this house. This time I live with this person. The next thing is I'm with this person, then here, then here, then here. Then I'm back with her for a short time, then I'm here again and there. And that instability, now I realize, really messed with me. But my mom really was trying her best. And at some point, she had this job in town, and she thought it best to take me to live with this auntie of hers. That's the auntie that she ran away from in Meru. I lived with this woman and her 4 kids, and her husband. And that was a very, very, oof, that was a very heavy time for me because this woman is just cruel. Like, when I think about her, I feel like she really was battling her own demons, and I was the easiest point of, venting. I was the easiest thing to use to vent. She was very physically abusive, mentally abusive, emotionally abusive. I say that because I know the moments when I was denied food, the moments when I was locked up somewhere just as a way to punish me. And I believe as an adult, this goes back to, how childhood trauma affects us as adults. I'm very claustrophobic. And it's because of, those moments when you're being locked in the toilet or you're being locked somewhere to, just to instill that fear. You're being denied food. One time I was denied food. And she was like, you're going to sleep hungry. You will learn your lesson. This place is not, a hotel. You weren't brought here to live for free and all that. What. You have to work for everything you have. And, those are the little things that build the whole nothing is for free in my mind. And anywhere where I associate with anybody, I have to be able to humble myself and pay back. And so when I was denied food and all that, and this was about the second day now, just being a child, innocently, I waited for this woman to go to the cow shed and milk the cow with her 2 very mean kids, well, daughters, who were the 2 last borns. And I snuck into the kitchen and I stole food. And basically what I stole was not even what they were having for dinner. I stole boiled maize. I stole the maize, then I ran to the toilet to go and eat it. And I ran to the toilet and I was just eating it so quickly because I'm just trying to finish it, then, pretend and come back and just be like, nothing has happened. But kumbe, one of the girls was, peeping through the hole and she saw me. And so this woman came and asked me what I'd done, and I lied. So of course, that's another mistake. And, she tied me to a tree and she gave me a beating I have never forgotten. I got scarred, and now I'm scarred for life. And my skin was just ripping and peeling. And I also lost my one of my front teeth. Thank God it was a milk tooth. And that is how I remember her. So when I think of her, that's one of the very good memories that stands out. And that's one of the very few abusive memories I had. And so I would wonder in moments why doesn't my mom love me? Why can't she just take me and I get to live with her? Why do I get to live with people and all these other kids live with their parents? Why am I alone? Why am I abandoned? Why don't I have a daddy and a mommy who are together like everybody else? And so I'll connect this to how my addiction began, because now understanding something called cross addiction in recovery, sometimes addiction begins way, way earlier than most people realize. So as a child, I started using food as a coping mechanism. And I didn't realize that. I just thought, I was always a very chubby, fat kid, and I loved eating, I loved food. But I didn't realize as a child, I used to overeat. I was so gluttonous, and I used to just overeat to deal with my feelings. And I had a habit of eating in secret as well. So if I got a chance to like go and buy stuff or because I don't want to be shamed for it, and already I'm such a big baby, um, I would go and just eat and snack up in secret. Every time my mom would come to visit me when I lived with this woman, I always wanted to tell her the abuse that I was going through and what was happening to me. But I was scared because I knew if I mention anything and she'll leave eventually because she's probably here for a day or two, this woman is just going to whoop me after that, give me a good beating. And I'm the only one left to suffer. And those are also things people need to be aware about when I talk about being present in your child's life, because you can't just assume because you've given your child to somebody and your child is just silent, they're being treated well and great. I decided at some point that I'm going to write my mom a letter and just tell her, just tell her that I can't do this anymore. I can't stay here. And so what triggered me to do that was that there's a nephew of this woman that would come and visit us a lot. And he's probably like the nicest person to me in that space at the time. He's the person I liked the most. And if I'm not wrong, he should have been in his early 20s. So this is a grown man, And, just knowing him as Uncle This, who comes and brings me nice stuff, and he'd see the way I'm being bullied and always just call me to sit on his lap. And he's always telling me to sing for him, checking my homework, just being very kind. Of course, I liked him because that seemed to be the only present person that treated me with some level of dignity. He was exactly the safe space that I had and the only safe space I had. And even as an adult, you know how to like manipulate a child, buying them this and that, telling them this and that. And so he floated the idea that I see the way these people treat you, I could probably take you somewhere else, to stay somewhere else. And so my plan was, I'm going to tell my mom. And if she doesn't do anything about this, I was planning to run away. But now as a grown woman, it's just sad thinking about it because this man was the first predator that was in my life. And I was just a child. I had no idea what that was, And he molested me and sexually abused me. I just thought that if I do anything he tells me to do, it's the least I could do because he treats me well and he does nice things for me. This is one of those, if you've been in the village, like how these homes are made. You have the main house, and then you have the kitchen on the side, on the outside. Then for the two older boys that she had, they had their own little homesteads on the side. And so when this guy would come to visit, the two brothers would move into one little homestead and he would have the other one. So all this would be happening in one of the little homesteads that he's given to stay in. So if he's staying with us for about a week or 2 weeks, I'm always spending time there because when I go to the kitchen, I'm given his food. I'm always taking his food. He'll ask for me to go and see him, probably sing for him. And maybe everybody else is just assuming that this is just uncle and niece time. But all that is happening in there. Yeah, I was 8, turning 9 when all this, abuse, sexual abuse and the molesting was happening. Man, all these incidences happening definitely affected me mentally and emotionally. However, now that I think about it in hindsight, I believe as a creative, I created two different personas, or I had a split personality from childhood. I feel like when I would be in church or in school or out and about with people, Chantiel, which is my middle name, Chantiel would come out. And I feel like I would just be such a little rock star and and just mask up so that people couldn't see through it. But anybody who was attentive probably might have seen through it, but I really doubt that, because I really don't even think anybody noticed much that was happening to me. And so that's why I had so many issues with different dudes, because you meet me, you like me, you have this idea of who I am and how I present myself, only for you to stay in my space or with me for a short time, and then the alcoholic and the demons appear and you're like, whoa, this is not what I signed up for, you know? So I feel like even as a child, creating that persona helped me cope in school and in other different spaces. And so my mom comes very randomly one day, and not expected, not one of those I've been told by day your mom is coming, I don't know on what day. She just pops up, and she doesn't come alone. She comes with this man. And so I've never seen this stranger. I'm a bit confused. I'm wondering who's this. And I wasn't really as hyped. My plan was just to give her the letter. And after that, I'm going to take up this man's offer and go away with him. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to run away. Like, at this point, I'm just like, if I have to be a street child and I'm just out there, that's better. I feel like street kids at least have the freedom to do whatever they want, rather than living here being abused and treated like I'm nothing, and just always crying every day and feeling this pain that I don't understand, you know. And it's deeper than the physical brutality. I didn't understand that I was actually depressed, you know. And so my mom comes with this man, introduces us, and next thing she tells me is that, you know, we're leaving. Oh my God. Talk about, you know, the joy that was in me. I feel like I can even remember and taste that moment until today. I was so happy. I was so thrilled. I was so excited. My God. Wow. It was a beautiful moment. I was so happy that even, you know, when she was telling me, like, go and pack up your things, I wasn't even thinking about packing anything. I didn't even care about anything. I just wanted to get out of there. I gave my mom the letter though. And my mom read the letter, and I just saw her break down, and she cried. And I always tell people that the part of the contents of this letter that I wrote her was, I was so broken, like a puppy that's been rained on. And of course, that was a metaphor I was using, but I was just trying to really, really try and express how bad things are. And so I feel like maybe for a moment it hit her that probably I messed up. This wasn't a good idea bringing my child here. But hooray, you know, like, it's time to leave. Deuces, everybody, we're out. We leave, and once we left, came back to Nairobi. Now I got to know the guy. The guy was my mom's boyfriend at the time, or hubby, whichever works. And they were seeing each other, they were dating. He was older than her, of course. My mom is now in her early 20s, yeah. You know, he seems to be a good guy, is doing very well, and is very put together. So for that second and third term of my, you know, class 5, I was shipped now to a boarding school. And I was in that boarding school for those 2 terms. And so my class 6, I'm in Greenyard, I'm living with my mom. And hey, it's just my mom and I, okay? And this guy, who's now my dad, is taking care of us, you know, footing the bills, taking me to school. I'm now adopting to, you know, warming up to the idea more like of accepting him as my dad, because initially I used to call him Uncle Mike. And so my mom sat me down and gave me this pep talk and was like, you know, this man is now your dad, okay? And she was explaining something. I understood it. And so, you know, he was amazing to me, and you know, I accepted him as my dad. My papers were legally changed, and that is why my surname is Ogolla, which most people don't understand when they hear that I'm Shyro Ogolla. Where do those meet? That's where it meets. And so my dad took me to school, raised me, became my best friend. Turns out he was married and had a whole other family. He had a first wife. And so, if we're being realistic about it, my mom came in the picture as a clandy. But I guess he fell in love and was serious about her. I mean, by the time you're taking in someone else's child and you're ready to settle with this person, that means you've seen something in this person that you want. And I have to mention that this is also where I feel the favor of God on my life. Because remember, I had a man before who took me as a child and was willing to raise me. And then again, there's a new guy in the picture who's again willing to raise me. And I feel like those are the destiny helpers that somehow God connected into my story. And so he'd come and visit, have dinner with us, sometimes sleep over. Then, if he's not spending the night, he's ready to leave and would tell me the nickname he gave me was Toto. So he'd be like, Toto, I'm going to work. And I'd be wondering, this man, what job is this? At what time? At midnight. And that's also how I know kids are smart. And one day, I hope when I have children, I learn to treat them with some level of maturity because I wasn't that big of an idiot. Like, I could piece two and two together. I'm like, there has to be something else. There's no job here. Come on. Fast forward, he's able to now tell me that he has a family, he has a wife and kids who didn't live too far away from where we lived. In fact, if our stage was like here, I think it was just like a 10-minute walk to his home where he'd built and had his family. I was excited. Finally, I hear I have brothers. Of course, I know they're not my blood, but who cares? I mean, they're my brothers. We share the same dad. I was the only girl. And so my dad really had a special place for me. And I felt like I was the flower, of his life. And my relationship with my dad, I have to say, was amazing as a child. It was great. Main reason being, my dad was very good communicator. My dad never beat me, except for one time after high school when he slapped the mess out of me because I sneaked out to go for a video shoot in the middle of the night, and I was only 15 years old, and I was trying to like hype and get in the music business, which he didn't support. But basically, he was never a brutal person. He wasn't physical. As a disciplinarian, I found him to be quite good at talking, explaining things, and I would adapt easily. And my mom, on the other hand, was, oh my goodness, she was a typical African mother that anytime my mom stepped in the house, I would even just be at attention because I don't know if she's coming to whoop me for something she didn't even tell me prior. She was a military, and my mom was, it's sad to say, but I've always known her as an angry person, a very angry person, a very sad person. This period living together, I thought my mom has rescued me from this place. And so we're gonna, be mother, daughter, we're living well, we're happy and all that. But that wasn't the case. My mom was just in her early 20s, and she's a young woman trying to figure herself out, who doesn't even understand she needs healing of her own. And so she slowly started, developing all these habits that now are affecting me as a child. She and my dad who my mom told me that he introduced her to alcohol because she wasn't a drinker before and all that. I remember her as a churchgoer and just not a drinker at all. So I think when she was with this man, this was the first time I ever saw my mom drinking. So they would party together. We would have moments when he takes us out, for family day, which is just the three of us. We go, maybe we've gone to watch Kina Mama Kayai somewhere, have, Sunday afternoon lunch, nyamchom, and they're busy having their beers. And I've gone for face painting and horse riding and having fun with all these kids, typical Kenyan Sunday afternoon plans. And so those habits developed. They would go out on their own as well, just drink. But slowly by slowly, this disease that we call alcoholism and addiction catches up with you. Because as much as she believed that she started drinking socially and just having fun with this man, it slowly developed into addiction without her realizing it's grasping her slowly and slowly. And so she'd be drinking in excess. And like I'd mentioned, I remember her being just depressed and constantly locking herself in the bedroom. Just locked in the bedroom, just drinking. I'll wake up. Sometimes I won't even see her, just go to school, do my thing. And she would also sometimes disappear. I don't see her for a few days, and she's out and about, comes, she's high, changes. And the thing I have to really emphasize on when it comes to my mom and how her mental and emotional imbalance used to be like, which also ended up affecting the way I'd relate with people over time. So typically when my mom was sober, she was probably the meanest person I had in my life at the time, because she was always angry. She's very poor at communication. She's also not the best at being vulnerable. And so that soft girl era just wasn't for her. That warming up and being all mushy mushy and, lovey and touchy, it just wasn't her style. And I feel like even now, it's a struggle. Like the moment I hug her, I think that's the most we do. Just hug. It wasn't her, words of affirmation or anything in that regard wasn't her best suit. So when she's sober, she's very mean. When she drinks, it's now one of the two. It's either she's gonna be excessively mushy that it feels uncomfortable. Like she'll come and she's all over just holding me and just, being all lovey-dovey and all that. And then it switches up because they're like stages of how your alcohol is misbehaving in the body. Then she gets into the venting and crying. And she just starts sobbing. And she starts crying. And every time I've seen my mom crying, and my mom like that, she has been high. Except for that one time she cried when she read my letter. And I don't know until today whether she was sober when that happened. But any other time that I've dealt with her that I've seen my mom crying and venting, she's been drunk. And so either she's going to come in that mood or she's going to come angry. And now the anger, leave the sober angry her rather. Now the drunk angry her is now the one that just broke me and her completely, because she probably would have had something happen and she's so triggered and she doesn't realize it, and then she's high and another influence, and so she'll probably come and use a particular issue to just vent out and pour her emotions out. And in that angry moment, start issues like reminding me that I was a mistake, reminding me that she had never planned for me, that I wasn't meant to be here, telling me things like, I ruined her life and that I was the worst thing that ever happened to her. And that wasn't said once or twice or thrice. And the moments when my mom has said to me that I should have just aborted you. You literally serve no purpose in my life. And those were very tough times. As a child, of course, I can't retaliate. I can't start speaking rudely to my parent or being, mean and all that. But there are points when there's one particular incident that happened that my mom and I got physical. And at that point, I was so fed up that I wasn't trying to get like physical, back. But I was trying to defend myself, because I was like, this is not normal. You don't just get to come and you're angry and hurt about your own issues. And at this point that I'm talking about, it was mainly issues with my dad that now they're having. And because I still have a good relationship with him, it hurts her. So she'll find reasons to just come at me. And I wasn't trying to be physical or anything, but I was like, I will defend myself if I need to. And I'm almost becoming a teenager, so I have my own ideologies and my own opinions, and I want to be heard. And I knew this is not normal. Deep down, I knew this is not how a parent should be behaving. You don't just walk into the house, you high, you messed up, and you want to like pour all that. I didn't know how to phrase it the way I'm phrasing it now, but that was pure projection. And typically in those moments, throwing that, he's not even your father, yet you're the one who introduced me to this man, told me to stop calling him Uncle Mike, and told me he's now my dad. And now that I've accepted him, you just yank him away. Like, do you see the cycle of what's repeating itself? You did that when I was a child. And you've done that. You put me in spaces, remove me. You can't just be bringing people in my life and just taking them away. It's not the healthiest thing to do with any child. But at this point, I'm grown enough to have developed my own ideologies, my own opinions, and I loved my dad so much that nobody was gonna come in between me and him, not even my mom. And so fast forward, I get to 11 years old. I am now in a boarding school. I'm no longer in a day school. I was taken to a boarding school that was Kabare Girls in Kirinyaga. And while I was in boarding school, I guess the relationship between my mom and my dad just kept deteriorating, like completely. However, my mom got pregnant at some point a year prior, and she had an ectopic pregnancy, and that affected her health a bit. And I believe shortly after that is because when she was in hospital for surgery, I lived with a friend of hers for a while. They made the decision to just take me to boarding altogether to give me a stable environment. Because now at home, things were getting so bad that the relationship between my mom and dad was becoming physically abusive. One night, I was so sound asleep only to wake up and I'm hearing noise, and I find my mom and my dad fighting each other. Like, these people were really throwing it down with each other. And I have no idea if my parents ever remember that I watched them in that state, and I was so traumatized. And they were fighting so badly, and I remember my dad was like hitting her and punching her, and my mom just reached out for a bottle that he had been drinking, and she knocked him with it on the head. And I was so scared. I was like, what is this? And she's bleeding and he's bleeding. And for a split second, it's as if I didn't even exist when all this was happening. And then he actually snapped out of it. And he realized I was there. And I think it hit him like, what are we doing? And this child is watching. And so I went to the bathroom. I just remember calming myself down. I'm like, what is this? He came out. He tried to talk to me and just talk to me like a child, like I clearly wasn't seeing what I'm seeing. And that wasn't the first or last time they were physical with each other. However, now when they decided to ship me to boarding school for my class 7 and 8, I'm sure the relationship got much worse. Eventually, my mom got pregnant and she gave birth to a baby boy. That is my brother, our third born. And this is actually the sibling I'm closest to. Reason being, I kind of raised him, He came into this world and I mean, I was excited, I was happy, I have a sibling to play with. But don't forget that I have another one somewhere that I haven't seen for so many years. It was sad when I think about it, but with parents sometimes, depending on how your relationship is, I was always afraid to ask my mom about him because I don't know if she's gonna snap and just slap me and just tell me, don't bring it up. Reason being, since I knew Ogolla wasn't my father, I'd had moments I tried asking my mom about who my real dad was. And my mom would shut that story so hard and in such a scary way that I never felt comfortable to just ask her anything. My mom, her drinking just got worse. Her relationship with my dad completely deteriorated. That by the time I was getting into high school, um, she was just never present. It was just me and my brother most times. He stopped trusting her completely, even with finances. It became so serious that my dad would now be sending me, a 13-year-old, rent money to go and pay the rent, sending me money for shopping, sending me money to go and sort out this and this and this, because they completely, for lack of a better word, detested each other. And to make it worse, I was caught in the middle of that tornado with each parent trying to pull me to their side. So on one side, you have my mom constantly bashing and talking down on my dad and telling me, reminding me, he's not even your father, he's not even your blood. You see, he's like this and like that and like that. And if I remember correctly, a lot of her accusations were that he was very, very, he was something we called a roundup man, which is, dudes who round up women in gallons and gallons. She would tell me that, he was involved with her friends, her own friends. He was involved with an auntie of mine. And this one, I didn't even need anyone telling me because I saw it for myself, which was very sad because it happened while I was there and it happened while I was somewhere with my mom. And I think she didn't understand. She's trying to make me think at the capacity of an adult, forgetting I'm just a teenager. So I guess she wondered, like, you were there with me and you saw A, B, and C. How are you still, this man and the way he's treating me, what. And on the other hand, my dad would also accuse her of infidelity. He accused her of lacking stability and not being of sound mind because of her drinking, just being an alcoholic, always partying, cheating on him, being with different men, and all that and all that. And he won with me. And I don't regret choosing my dad over my mom. Reason being, he was the parent that was stable enough to take care of my brother and I. If I'd sided with my mom, I don't even know what would have been of us for the next few years. But I honestly cast out my mom completely and I chose my dad. And my dad had actually suggested at some point that I think I'm gonna take you guys and your mom cannot be a part of our lives and all that. And I remember him telling me this when he'd taken me out on a dinner date. And I supported him. I was like, yeah, for me, at this point, I used to call my mom that woman. I'm like, at this point, I can't stand that woman. And whatever issues she has, I'm just done. So eventually, my dad ended up taking my mom to court. And he was able to prove that she wasn't at the best place to take care of me and my brother. Her drinking, of course, was one of the major problems. And also, she didn't have proper financial independence. And her brother, who's my uncle now, my mom's brother, also testified against her. So I feel like she'd also not realized that, she didn't have the best relationships with the people around her. So the court ruled in my dad's favor, and my dad took us away. And I remember even when this happened, I was very happy when it happened because it's a mix. It was mixed emotions. One part of me was very happy. Reason being, just before this court thing happened, my mom had moved us from the place we were living to go look for another house because we were being kicked out from this particular house just because she had not paid the bills. And it's not that the money wasn't there, but she was like using whatever, she had been given to like do her own things. And when we moved to this new place, I think we stayed there for like less than a week. And one day when I come from school, the house is empty. I don't know where my mom has gone to. The caretaker doesn't even know. He's just seeing me in my uniform and telling me, your people left. And I have no idea. And I'm calling my dad, I'm crying and I'm panicking because I don't know where everybody is, and I had to stay at the caretaker's house until nightfall, till nightfall for me to have a solution. And so it's things like those that would trigger him as well, and just wonder, what kind of a mother is this? What kind of a parent is this? And because he has a wife that's so put together back at home, and the way she carries herself, she's such a nurturer. I think he always looked at my mom and thought, this woman is crazy. She's just crazy. And I also felt the same. So when the court ruled in his favor, I was happy, because that instability with my mom, the meanness, the anger, the terrible relationship, I was just happy to not have that energy anymore. And I gotta mention that at some point I'd even run away from home. Like I just told my dad, called my dad and told him where I was. And I kept telling him, I don't want to live with this person. Like, it's too much. So I was happy. But on the other side, I was so hurt and I was so disappointed. And the reason being, what was told to me was that my mom came to court, and when the judge presided over the matter, my mom didn't apparently bother to like fight for my brother and I. She, from what the picture that was painted to me, it's as if she just walked in and was like, yo, where the papers at? I'm done with these kids or these people, signs, and walks away. That's the picture I have to emphasize that I had of my mom and how she did it. And so what it made me feel was that she never cared. She's left me before. She left my brother, who I don't even know if he's alive or exists, our second born. She's now left me with this one, who's just a baby, our third born. You know what? Living is her specialty. So the anger, and now I'm just a teenager, she might as well just stay gone. A part of me started treating my mom like she was dead. And so by this point, I'm 15 years old and I'm in my third year of high school. And this is in 2010, and it was a difficult time because I'm at home. I was in a day school, and now I have to take care of my brother. I have to wake up super early, prepare him, take him to school, rush to school, do school, leave school, run back to his school, get him from school, go back home, take care of him, help him out. We'd have a help coming to come and clean and what. But now I'm just living with this child. My dad is paying her rent at the new place we moved to. So I've become a mom. Think about it. I'm now just a mom to a child that I shouldn't even be mothering, I should be thinking about my exams. I should be thinking about my future. I should be focusing on myself. But now I've just become a mother to my brother, who I love to death. At 15, I thought I was, I was that girl. You're thinking you're all grown, you're trying to experiment with makeup, and you like boys, and this boy likes you, this one doesn't like you, it hurts. But instead of like going for some school trips, engaging in weekend group discussions and studies with others, I couldn't do much because I have to be home taking care of my brother. This child gets sick in the middle of the night. I had to learn what it is, to wake up and figure out how you're getting this child to hospital. And because my father is not necessarily living with us in the same house, we're just always on phone, comes to visit from time to time. If he's not anywhere I can get him on phone, I have to figure things out myself. And I would credit my independence at an early age and my work ethic and just my spirit to grind from this season of my life. It taught me how to really think on my feet and to be very, very sharp. And so I guess there were pros and cons of it all. I started working at that point at the age of 15. I would go to studios, do odd jobs. In fact, shout out to my first boyfriend, Sankara, who whose cousin is a huge music producer in the music industry, Yilo Pangoma. And when he introduced us, I got to start working with him, behind the scenes and just learning, a lot of what I got to know as a creative. I used to sell water for some mother close to my home, and she'd pay me kidogo kidogo. Sometimes she'd actually give me a lot of like free veggies and potatoes and stuff like she'd get from her farm. So those were the little witty things I was doing all around to just keep my bro and I going. However, my dad was present and in terms of finances and did the best he could to provide for us. My brother, I think I felt for him because your mother is alive, your father is alive, but you don't have that stability. But when I see what's happening on the other home with the brothers, they seem to have this very put together life. They have their mom and their dad together. And I remember one day we were taking a walk around that area, and I just went to like peep through the gate, and I was like, man, if only we were the ones living in that house and we had what they have. From the outside, it seemed like they had it figured out, they had it all. And I would carry my brother with me to studios and just do everything with him on my back. And I guess that's why we have such a bond. Sadly, the same cycle, and I have to keep insisting as I share this story, there is a lot of spiritual bondage and generational cycles, and also just cycles that repeat themselves over time. So one thing that happened with me as a child that now repeated itself with my brother as a child is not only the lacking stability in terms of our living, but now when I get into my last year of high school, my Form 4, since I have to really focus on my exams and my dad thought it best that I have to be on my A game, my brother was now shipped to a boarding school. So my brother goes to a boarding school and he's in baby class. He's the youngest boarder. This is in Joyland, Buruburu. He's the youngest boarder in that school. This boy was so tiny. He was so small. If you could see him, like the uniform is wearing him instead of him wearing it. And he's so confused because he doesn't understand, why am I staying here, sleeping here? And the sad part was that with the other kindergartners, especially those in baby class, when school hours would be done and they go home, my brother is the only one that remains. And that thing really saddened me. It really, really saddened me so much that when I finished my last paper was a history paper, I told my dad, you know what, we are going to get this boy. My brother cannot stay. Because that sadness that I saw in his eyes and him trying to hold back, not crying and just feeling left behind, I knew that feeling. That feeling was familiar. And even now, I'm hot while saying this because there are feelings that are so familiar, even with my neighbors. When I see a neighbor of mine treating their child a certain way, the way you can see a neighbor just shouting at their child so aimlessly, instead of like calling them in the house and not embarrassing them or just slapping them all over in public and all that, it triggers me so much because I know that feeling. And I try and wonder, while you do one thing to someone, do you put yourself in their shoes to know how they're receiving it and how they feel? And so I was very quick to tell my dad, let's get this boy back from boarding school. He came back home. I am not going to lie to you and tell you that now I was just 100% happy and good. There are moments I would find myself projecting things on my brother. Because sometimes you're so irritated, you've woken up, you're tired, you have this child to take care of. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with my future. I feel alone. I don't have the freedom to breathe at all. Like, I'm a teenager and something as small as my friends are having a party. and they're gonna be boys, and probably there's a boy I like who's attending that party, do you really, really think I won't feel some type of way? Like, I have to be at home and just babysit and stay with my bro because I can't even associate and do the fun things that my peers are doing, you know? And so sometimes I would be really, really in some angry moods or depressive moods. But the good thing is, I had been taught communication skills, at least to a degree, by my dad. So I'd catch myself and apologize to him or make him understand that if he saw me shouting, I'm the type to go back, apologize, and make him, understand that I was feeling some type of way. It's not his fault and all that. So at this point, I'm away from my mom. The court has ruled in my dad's favor. I'm living with my brother. I'm raising my brother. And I felt like I could finally breathe because my mom, who was supposed to be the person that rescued me, and I'm living with her and I should be happy, became the most abusive person in my life at the time. So now I'm away from her and I feel like I can breathe, I'm good. But I had no idea this was gonna be the beginning of a tumultuous journey. I had no idea that, I was gonna become an alcoholic, that I was now getting into a season of serious trials, not just from alcoholism, but getting raped, getting kidnapped, getting assaulted, getting into an abusive relationship, and as well as finding myself in a cult in the name of Jesus Christ and in the name of trying to find freedom and peace in Christ. I had no idea that was where my life was headed to. And I think had I known that was what was waiting for me ahead, I probably would not have judged my mom so hard and kicked her to the curb. I would have allowed her to stay in my life and probably help me through that journey because I was alone and I had nobody at all. And now I had to face the demons that were to be all on my own. And that is the story that I want to share next.